Good evening, everybody. For those who might not know who I am, I'm Dawn Numdu, and I host these sessions once a week for developing farmers, new farmers, even farmers who's newly commercialized within agriculture in South Africa and the rest of Africa, actually. We've had people from all over Africa joining these conversations and contributing, sharing information, sharing experience, talking about what they do on their farm, basically coming together to gather to grow. So that's basically what it says. In the meantime, I'm going to ask Kazala to introduce herself. She's been on this platform before, and I'm very happy to have her back because the first time she joined, she was actually with Duncan, and Duncan told me that you really stole the show. So I'm hoping to get as much out of you tonight, Gazala, and that we can make this conversation as fruitful as the one from before. So maybe just for those that might not know you, just a short introduction, what you do within the agricultural space, who you work with, and more about you and your journey in agriculture. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and I hope to not disappoint you, The standard is set high. I'm Gisela Bischoff. I'm a ruminant nutritionist for ADM Animal Nutrition in South Africa. We are a global company present in over 50 countries worldwide, an American company. So we specialize in premixes with the focus on micro mineral nutrition as well as additives. And ruminants is a big passion of mine, especially the reproduction side. So that's actually a very good link with this breeding talk. So what we do at ADM, we offer our customers 360-degree approach, as we call it, from sample analysis to the factory that we run in Brits. Our head office is in Sandton, and I'm situated in Ermelo in the Platteland. So I'm very privileged to be able to work with a global company, but on a local level, and be in contact with farmers and with spaces like this, which keeps us in contact with what's happening on the ground. Because a lot of times we have 11 research stations within ADM. A lot of the times we get so scientific about things, but it's very good to know that our science that we investigate and that we constantly improve also comes back to ground level. I truly enjoy talks like this where we can share knowledge, help other people improve.
Thank you so much, Kazela. And I think any contribution from your side and the work that you do is valuable. So thank you so much for, contributing and being part of the conversation, being willing to talk to us and share your experience and expertise, and also more of the work that you do. My other two guests, the one is Dr. Mpanza. My third guest, Dr. Sean Samuels, this is not really his expertise. He actually nominated his colleague, Dr. Tammy Mpanza, for this talk, but he is here to listen in and then also maybe contribute towards the end. And maybe I think it would be great to just briefly talk a little bit about his research and what he does within the agricultural space towards the end of the conversation. Dr. Mpanza, thank you so much for joining the conversation and being part of tonight's discussion. Maybe just more about your work at the Agricultural Research Council. You're also a livestock nutritionist. Thank you so much. Maybe just more about the work that you're doing.
My name is Tammy Mpanza. I'm working for Agricultural Research Council as a researcher in ruminant nutrition, focus more on small ruminant. My interest basically is more on what I will call the link between the microbes and the food or the feed that is fed to an animal. Well, I think we know that one of the problems, especially in ruminant, is the issue of methane gas emission, which is a major problem which contributed to the global warming. So one way is to find a way of modulating the rumen in order to reduce methane emission while we're improving production. At the same time, also improve the quality of the animal by reducing saturated fatty acid or promoting unsaturated fatty acid either in milk or meat. So shortly, I'm interested more on nutrigenomics. Briefly, that is who I am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tammy. And it's really great that you were able to join us and share more about your research and the work that you do as part of the Agricultural Research Council. Now, I think over the past 2 weeks, these two sessions were supposed to specifically do that. Focus on some of the research that's out there, some of the expert knowledge that's out there, some of the studies that is being done to get that information closer to the farmers that connects with us on this platform. As the topic indicates, we're focusing on livestock, nutrition and breeding techniques. And this is specifically for developing farmers or new farmers within agriculture in South Africa. Now, I think my first question would be, and I would like both of my speakers to answer this one, what is the first thing that new or developing farmers should understand when it comes to, livestock breeding and nutrition? Is there a kind of guideline, page or workbook to work from or basis to start from, especially if you're new in the industry? Gazella, I'm going to give you the floor first, and then I'll go over to Dr. Tammy. Thank you so much.
Currently, we have a lot of discussions as the big feed mills are our main target market. And there's no bad or low quality feed mill. There's no space for in the industry for someone that is substandard. So if you go to the corporation, my first suggestion would be to get the large commercial feed manufacturer guides. They have very nice supplementation guides or feeding guides, mixing instructions. So you ask for their product guide. But the things that we would look into that is, remember, your veld does not supply everything that your animal needs. Sometimes during the year, we do not have enough grazing. Then we need to add a complete feed for our cattle or our sheep. But other times we have enough grazing that we just need to supplement. But I would really say that a lot of the feed mills currently, or the feed manufacturers, their product guides are on a very high standard. It really answers all the questions that you would require. But the things that you would look at is the protein levels. If you need to compare different feeding strategies or feed supplementations, you would look at the protein levels, the energy, as well as then the micro mineral side, which is my specialty for support to reproduction. Because ultimately, if your animals don't get pregnant, you can't reproduce, you can't breed. So all of that is in aim to support your animals to give you profitability. But my suggestion, sweet and simple. You can go into books and the NRC values, etc., but you're just going to be confused afterwards, and you will feel as if you know less than before you started. So my suggestion would be to go with the big feed suppliers, high quality products all over the market, or even the local guys in your area. That would be my first suggestion. But you would really look at products with enough protein, enough energy, and sufficient micro minerals to supplement your animal's needs.
Thank you so much, Gazella. And I think that's a perfect way to start, as you're suggesting. Dr. Tammy, any contribution from your side in terms of farmers wanting to know more about how to understand breeding and nutrition when it comes to livestock better? Where should they go to? Who should they turn to? And maybe we can talk more frankly to say that perhaps farmers that don't have access to a corporacy, or they've so far removed that they don't really have that kind of access, what is out there?
Adding to what my colleague said, but I think I wanted firstly to come to this reality before maybe I can have any input, that when we talk of the livestock producer in South Africa, we need firstly to understand that there is a commercial farmers and there is a small scale farmers. So now between these two, their access and financial, so to say, muscle in terms of able to buying the ingredient are not the same. However, the problem of feeding the quality feed to animals is hitting them all, irrespective either you are commercial or you are small scale or emerging. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because when we respond, we need to respond with an understanding, as you ask the question, that those who may not have the access to the cooperacy or what is available, alternatives and alternatives. Basically, you look at that. My starting point is to say, as a farmer, understand first and foremost the available material in your space. For example, when we speak of an available material, understand the type of grass that is where you are. so that you understand. Then once you understand that, you'll be then able to understand the nutritive value of that specific grass across the year. Generally speaking, we know that our grass, as previous speaker said, our grass it's lacking most of the minerals such as calcium, phosphorus, or even macro minerals. You speak of selenium, you speak of iron, and so forth. That is where then the area of getting mineral supplement comes in, plays an important role. Having said that, also, we know that again, the first limiting nutrients in our forage is protein. And it becomes more so during dry season because our natural grasses, I'm just speaking on natural grasses from at the moment, our natural grasses, which is different from planted pastures, because planted pastures, you might put fertilizer there, you might irrigate and so forth. But then when you look at natural pastures, those are the key limiting factors or limiting nutrients, if I may, yes, limiting nutrients. So now that then help you to understand as a farmer to have a program that you plan so that you know that if the grass that I have or the forage that I have in my space, it is available at this time with this nutritive value or with this nutrient composition, what do I have to do? What do I have to supplement? Because supplementation, in the simplest term that I can try to simplify, is to augment or is to top up what is lacking from your grass or from your forage. So now you need then to know what the forage has and what your animals that you have require. Let me give an example in what I'm trying to say so that maybe it can be more easily. Let's say for a dry animal that is not growing, that is not pregnant, that is not producing meat or feeding the breastfeeding young one, just a dry animals, it needs a protein that is 7%, meaning 70 out of per kilogram of feed that it eats. Now, when you look at the grass, for example, the grass has 4. That means there is a shortage of 3. Then as a farmer, then that is where then you have to say, okay, how can I get these 3 so that I top up from the 4 that is in the grass so that the animal that I'm feeding will be able to get what it requires for each, just for maintenance. It's a different case when you go for an animal that is pregnant or you are preparing your animals for breeding or you are preparing your animals or it's an animal that is growing the winners because their demand is slightly higher compared to an animal that is dry. Just giving an example. That is the starting point. So then you are able then to have a program as a farmer to say, now I know that in this time of the year, my forage, it contains this and this and this and this, is lacking this and this and this and this. The type of the animal that I'm feeding require this. So now in order for me to be able to feed what the animals requires in terms of nutrients, I have to know what is available and what do I need to add. I hope I'm still clear in that regard. Then the second part, again, with the two farming, I don't know, should I say farming sector, the commercial and the small scale. Because I think the first speaker covered more on the which might be fitted well on the commercial part. But if you come to a small scale, you need then to look at their variable material. Let me just make a typical example about goat. Normally, when you release goat from the kraal in the morning, particularly during dry season period, if you notice as a farmer, they will run to a particular place to graze there before they can start to be scattered somewhere else. And that is the indication that they are telling you that in that particular trees or in that particular shrub or tree, it contains what we need at this time of the year. So now, as a farmer, my advice is to say, when such animals, when you notice such, it is then advisable to collect such material, send it into the lab for chemical composition analysis so that you know what specific nutrients does that thing contains. Then how can you capitalize to make use of that? E.g., if they eat some seed pods of the plant, which might contribute, for example, in protein shortage, or they might help in protein to boost up the protein content, which is very low during dry season period. But now you find that while they are eating the seed pod, they are eating with the seed, which those seed end up being scarified in the stomach, and they end up being dispersed and contributing in dispersal of the seed, which end up growing. Now, as a farmer, how would you then stop that? How can you process that so that you are killing the seed at the same time you are able to feed this material to the animals, but the seed are not germinating. The goats will not dispersing the seed that are germinating. Recently, I even see some animals eating some seed pod, and in one of the areas as we are going around doing some research.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tammy. And I think that you are a definite perfect contributor here tonight, specifically, in terms of your experience and work on the ground and really, representing, smallholder producers. And I don't like the word emerging, but developing farmers within this context. So thank you so much for giving that clear overview. I see Dr. Irshan Samuels has also just requested the mic. I'm going to maybe give him a chance just to introduce himself if you'd like to. And then my next question, I think you've basically answered a big part of my next talking point, which was to focus on the main principles of breeding farm livestock. And I think maybe, Gazella, if you'd like to speak more on the commercial side of things, because we do have a varied audience. And then we'll go over to Dr. Tammy for the more smallholder producer. And then I think from there, I'll give Dr. Shan Samuels also a chance just to introduce himself. And maybe also he'd like to contribute to the conversation. Thank you so much. Gazella, over to you.
Hard to add to that complete discussion as it was now. First thing that we must remember is our animals eat more or less 3.5% dry matter of their body weight. That is quite a lot. We must ensure that they have enough grazing. The moment that their lick supplementation intake increases, it indicates to us our field quality and the volume is going down. So that's always a good indicator to start moving over to another type of feeding regime. So that is applicable to both developing as well as commercial farming. That is the basic principle. So whether you have 5 cattle or a herd of 200, that is your principle. And then also with the link to breeding, we must always remember that's a big mistake that even commercial farmers make, is once the animals are determined pregnant, they are chucked into the field, the area or the time of their pregnancy where they can save some costs. But they are totally wrong, because the first 100 days is the development of your amount of muscle cells and your amount of fat cells. So if you limit the nutrition of that pregnant animal, which is very often done, so don't feel bad if you are one of those guys, that also determines the feeding of that pregnant animal, determines the lifetime performance of that calf. So if you want to keep back healthy heifers as replacement heifers, if you want to finish those cattle off, if you want to have a bigger, higher weaning weight, etc., you need to look at your first 100 days of pregnancy feeding as well. Don't forget that. And as soon as she starts to calf down or lamb down, her nutritional needs increases a lot. But first and foremost, ensure that she gets enough roughage, and your lick supplementation intake will indicate. As soon as your lick supplementation intake increases, the herd shows you that quality and volume is going down. So that's a good pointer to use, because we cannot do anything without enough food. We can supplement whatever, but if there's not enough grass, we are wasting our money. Does that answer your question?
Definitely, Gazella. And I think I have another follow-up question to that, but maybe I'll just ask Dr. Shan Samuels just to maybe introduce himself, tell us a bit about what he does, and maybe ask if he has something specific to contribute to the previous questions, or maybe just to add to what either of you guys mentioned. Thanks so much, Dr. Shan.
Thank you, Don, for the opportunity. So I'm Irshan Samuels. I'm a rangeland ecologist with the ARC. My work is mostly to do with the management of the veld, and I think both speakers were touching on the veld as the base for your nutrition. So that's the type of work that I'm engaging with, and maybe I'll just want to contribute to the question from that angle. The current position that I have is the United Nations declared 2026 the year of rangelands and pastoralists. In South Africa, we use the term, it's the International Year of Veld and Livestock Farmers. So there's a worldwide movement that try to give attention to veld and to livestock farmers and the value that they bring, not only for food security, but also for livelihoods and other environmental benefits. So what I want to contribute to conversation is that if you are a starter farmer, you need to first do a sort of what I would maybe say a bit of homework, is that don't have breeds that are not adapted to the area that you are in. Have ambitious targets. Your felt is your base. And I think you probably economically won't survive by just feeding your animals feed that you buy. So your felt is your base. And I think from the conversation, I would say you have to look after your felt. We recently finished a project where we visited the best 100 farmers throughout the country. And some of the messages that we get with them is that they don't farm with livestock, they farm with the veld. So whatever the veld is your livelihood. And they even said their lifestyle depends on what the veld can give them. What I'm trying to say is you shouldn't force the issue, because you end up destroying the land and you end up having more expenses than you should. So I would say check the breed that's adapted to your environment, check the nutritional requirements for the animal, assess what the animal can get in the veld during different seasons, and then work out the plan for nutrition there onwards. And whether you can find the nutritive supplementations in the veld that Tami was referring to, some of these trees, encroaching trees, these very thorny trees, they are very nutritious if you can get them to the animal. So use that as well, and obviously in a commercial feed as well. But our experiences is with farmers with a drought is they asked us the question is that when they feed, for example, during a drought, do you feed for production or do you feed for survival? So you also have to answer that question as well, because there's different feed requirements for your different type of objectives that you have. Do you just want your animals to survive, or do you still want to have the animals reproduce during a drought period, for example? So my input is look after your knowledge, your resource base, which is the veld, assess what it is, and then you build your business from there onwards. A solid foundation would set you on the right path. Just a lot of planning up front.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samuels. And I have no doubt that this conversation could probably go on for another episode and maybe another episode afterwards, because I think we've basically just hit the surface from our speakers in terms of their knowledge and their research and the studies that they've done. And I'm absolutely in awe of what you guys have contributed so far. Dr. Tami, I think that you wanted to also just contribute to what Dr. Samuels was mentioning.
On the question that you asked, the first question, there is a part of breeding. Maybe I'm contributing to what Ikrana said, is the one of the major issue that cause us to be, our farmers mostly to be in trouble, particularly the small scale farmers. I think there's a word that you said you hate, but then is to come to a point where you need as a farmer to be able to, particularly if you've got your own space, able to control your breeding. Now, when you are able to control your building, it helps you to know that, for example, during a hard season or dry season, where if feed quality is low, even the quantity is low because there is no rain and so forth, then one needs to come to a point to say, what animals do I have to supplement, particularly if you were to feed above the maintenance. Now, what animal, for example, that do I need to supplement? Do I have weaners at that time, or I have pregnant animals, or I have calving animals at that time, or I have animals that are breastfeeding the young ones? So now, how many of them are there? So that when you plan now your feeding program, you are able then to look at the quantity of feed that is available and the quality of that feed vis-a-vis the animals that you want to feed at that time. What is their requirements? And for me to be able to meet the requirement of this particular group of animals, how much do I have to spend, or what resources are available to reduce the cost of feeding? Because if you spend a lot to raise a certain group of animals, then you might not end getting enough. I think because the critical thing is that be able to provide what the animals need at a lesser cost or manageable cost, then you'll be able to be productive in that sense. So why I'm saying this is that then you are able to have a full program to say, I know that my animals will be lambing at this time or calving at this time. This is the number of animals will be calving. Therefore, what does that mean in terms of the feed requirement, either from the quantity as well as the quality?
Thank you so much. For sure, Kazala.
I'm just jumping in. I do agree to the to the cost saving and to focus on where you really want to supply. But two things that I want to mention is, especially with livestock being in conjunction with breeding, obviously reproduction and then profit follows on to each other. There were studies done by Dr. Johnson, and they saw that it's cheaper or more economic to supplement your animals throughout the year, 12 months of a year, than to try to save during times when it's going well and catching up when the condition is going down. So just keep that in mind. It's cheaper to maintain your body condition on your herd than to try and catch up once you lost 1 or 2 body condition scores, because that's 100 kilograms easily if you lose 1.5 to 2 body condition score. And if you take the meat price, that's quite a lot of money to get that animal back to where it was. Say, for instance, before calving. So keep it in mind. It's rather supplement throughout the year and maintain your animals. Then the second one is, my friend is farming at a dairy farm. He's the manager there, but he's got very limited space on the amount of head of cattle that he's allowed to keep on the farm that he's working at. So instead of saying, yes, okay, I'm going to feed those ones, complete feed, etc., he uses that as a tool to strictly select his breeding herd. So say, for instance, you have enough space. Say, for instance, I have 300 hectares on which I can keep my animals. I have enough food. I'm not going to be too strict on selection. So my herd is never going to improve in quality. But once you get limited on amount of grazing that you have, limited on your budget that you have for supplementation, because everything is bloody getting more expensive. So rather than to spare on your supplementation, rather spare on which animals you give it to. Which ones are you going to sell to buy food for the rest? That's more or less the economic side, which I would apply to say that, yeah, this cow gives me 1 calf every second year, but this one gives me 1 calf every year. So she's more profitable. So I'm going to sell that one that only gives me 1 calf every second year, because chances are also good that she will be the one without enough milk. She will probably be the fatter one, so I will get enough money for her, because the one that calves down every year will be thin, because she's actually producing and reproducing. She actually puts it into a calf. So I would look at it that way and rather improve the quality of your herd, even though you have 10 cows. Say, for instance, you have space for 10 cows. Eliminate your weakest 2. The ones that wean the smallest or the lightest calf, the ones that struggles to suckle every time, the ones that struggle to calve down, or the ewe that struggles to lamb, the one that's always going through the fences. You see the bull continuously go back. She doesn't fall pregnant. Rather improve the quality of your herd when times are getting tougher regarding feeding. That's just a little bit out of the box suggestion to being more profitable with less animals.
Thank you so much, Gazella. And I'm sure both of the other speakers would be wanting to comment on what you're saying. There were specific questions that came from farmers within our network who specifically wanted to information around developing a health plan or vaccination program. And then there was also a focus specifically on some of the other challenges in terms of brucellosis vaccines for heifers. So if you guys have insights on that, just to keep that in the back, I think if we have time towards the end, we can maybe talk about that briefly. And I think you've given us so much great advice, and maybe just more specifically around techniques that are used to enhance livestock reproduction. Dr. Tami, would you like to take this one?
It depends. For example, if you look at in livestock production, it touches many things, because your whole breeding program, your whole nutrition program, they are interlinked. But they're trying to be specific, because if you look at the production of the animal, is not only one stream only, because you can have a good genetic selected animal, but if it's lacking, if you are not getting enough food to feed that particular animals, for that particular animals, again, the production will drop. You may have the good quality feed, but if the genetic is not improved, again, the production will drop. Or if the health of the animals is not improved. So to answer that question, one needs to look at the whole production chain, the whole thing, to say, now, what is it? If for me, I'm targeting to get this quality of the animals, first and foremost, I must understand the breed that I'm working with. Secondly, how much does it require in terms of the food? I think in terms of the feed, I think Dr. Ikshani indicated that does that particular breed adaptable in the area that I'm living in? Let's say, for example, somebody promoting, for example, limousine. Now, in the area that I am in as a farmer, does limousine will be able to live there productive as it expected? What will be the possible limiting factor? Do I have enough feed to feed it? What are the common diseases that are in the area which some, maybe for example, limousine may not be able to survive, may not be able to tolerate that? Even the climatic condition, it has a factor on its own. So I'm trying to say in that regard, as a farmer, it is critically important to look at all these things holistically so that when you select a breed, you select a breed that itself would want demand much from you in terms of money. Either you're buying a lot of feed or either you are buying a lot of medication because it's getting sick easily. It's not adaptable to the particular area. But as a plan, shortly have a plan program for your feeding of your animals, knowing how much amount of the feed is available at what time, at what nutritive value, what is lacking. Secondly, understand your breed that you have as the farmer, because that will help you to know that, okay, this breed, this is what it requires. This breed, it is not adaptable into 1, 2, 3 things. So now, if it's not able to survive in this area, why do I keep up with it? Because I must keep with a breed that will be able to survive in the area in which I'm operating as a farmer. Then secondly, then you need to have a full program of the animal, looking at the health status of the animal, which interlinks with the food, interlink or link with the breed, also link with the climatic condition or the environment in which you keep your animals as a farmer. And
No, definitely, Dr. Panza, you've given us a lot to think about. And I think it comes back to time and time again. We've heard many experts on this platform say that the day you start farming is the day you start capturing your data and keeping record of everything, making a note of everything on your farm that's happening, how your environment is changing, what's happening with your animals, how are they changing, how are they adapting, and making those vital decisions early on to save money is also very important. Dr. Samuels or Gisela, do you guys want to contribute to that question or maybe add on to what Dr. Mpanza was saying? And then my next question would be around what do you need to know or understand when it comes to formulating a ration for selected livestock? So how do we set up this plan exactly? And also then my last question, and I think we can actually answer both and then start wrapping up. How do you sort of start to evaluate the effectiveness of this plan? And how much time do you give for this monitoring and evaluation? Thank you so much.
I just have something little to add is that I think for a farmer, if you start up, you shouldn't forget there are some other means of how people used to do it in the past that allow them to, still be able to farm. And I think going back to that indigenous knowledge is so crucial because that's the knowledge that comes from the specific area, and it's obviously practices that are adapted to the conditions that you are finding yourself within. So I think I just wanted to make that one point. And in terms of breeding, people used to do in the past in trying to have a controlled breeding season, because that's very important that you don't want your animals to be born sort of out of season where there's not a lot of resources for the lactating mother and the calf or the lamb to eat. So you need to plan when your animals need to be born. And in that case, most of the time, you have to keep your male animal, your reproductive animal, apart from the rest of the herd. So I know in the past, people used to, all the different farmers who have different herds and used to put all the males together and have a separate herd and have a herder just looking after the males as well, because it's very costly to have animals born out of season, because you would need much more a feed supply, but also the condition and the stress that you put on the mother is quite severe during that time of stress anyway because of forage limitation. So do that. And then also something that a lot of farmers do in the communal areas is that you don't always have to go buy the best ram or the best bull, because it could be fairly expensive. We sampled private farmers, big farmers, and I asked them, where do you get your males from? And they said, they exchange males, they exchange with other farmers because firstly, they see it's quite expensive to buy the best rams, but sometimes their opinions vary whether that big looking animal is still the best animal to breed with as well. So it depends on, what your objectives with your farm as well. But what I'm trying to say is that don't forget your indigenous and local knowledge and also the knowledge of your peers because that's where you learn the most as well. So chat here and there with a farmer next door or farmer in your farmers organization or member of a co-op would help a lot because that is where you learn most of your knowledge as well. So it doesn't have to be specific to nutrition and breeding, but don't forget the basics of farming as well. That could go a long way. That would be from my side. And just to answer a large part of the latter part of your question, Dawn, is how would you know if your plan succeeds? Well, you'll see it in the condition of the animal. You can see it in the condition of the veld. If your veld's getting degraded, you know that there are too many animals. If the condition of the animal goes 1 or 2 grading down, or the weights aren't there, the condition isn't there, the reproductive rate isn't there, then you know what you're doing needs to be improved. So you can see it in the money that you make or in the condition of the animal or the veld. I think that is key. So keep an eye on the veld and keep an eye on the animals. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samuel. Zella, your contribution?
As you mentioned a bit earlier as well, record keeping. That will show you, yes, my animals conceived earlier. I had earlier calvings within my breeding season, which I totally agree to. Better weaning weights indicating better milk production from the cow. So record keeping, data keeping, and investing in your animals, you should see as an investment and not as a running cost, because the investment you make today is only coming back after weaning those calves. That should still be conceived. So it's a 2-year commitment, if I could say, for that circle to totally turn once you start from nothing to supplement until you really see the results where the clock is ticking nicely. So I would definitely say it's you should rather look at it as an investment than a cost that you add to your herd. But yeah, I would say with your first calving and weaning, you will see results and then you will see it in your pocket as well.
Thank you so much, Gazella, and I would like to thank all of my speakers for contributing this evening. Dr. Mbanza, would you like to add one more thing?
On the part of the formulation of feed ration, I think the critical thing is to, one, understand what animals or at what production stage is the animal that you are formulating feed for. What is the nutritional requirement of that particular animal at that stage? E.g., if you are formulating a feed for a calf, that the young animal that are growing, that maybe you want to use it for meat production, as the previous speakers said about the weaning weight and the like. When you formulate a feed, there's a specific requirement of energy that it needs, a specific requirement particularly of protein that animals need. So now when you formulate a feed guided by the animal, the production stage of the animal in which you are making or preparing that feed for. Then you go to the ingredients that you are going to use in formulating that feed. You need then now to check what is required. You know what is the animal require, what is available in that ingredient, so that when you mix them in a proportion that it will be able to provide enough energy, enough protein, enough minerals, and the like as the ingredients, as the nutrients that the animals need. So now then, for you to be able to see the effectiveness of that, if I may stick with the example of the winners for this case, as the previous speaker said, even Dr. Ekshane said that the record keeping is a critical thing, because you know that this animal was weighing this much at birth. Now, as we are feeding, you are feeding that targeting a particular weight that you want to achieve, say, for example, in 90 days. Now, when you are formulating a feed, it must be able to be converted into the product that you are looking for, which what we call feed conversion ratio. If you are feeding a certain feed, and let me make an example, you are feeding 1 kilogram of the feed that you formulated, but it's not effective enough to be converted into a product, into a weight gain of your winners, then something might be wrong. Could be the formulation went wrong somewhere, or it doesn't provide what the animals need. Of course, the breed that you are formulating for is critically important. The production stage is critically important. The ingredients that you have are critically important because that's what you will use in order to make what the animals will need. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mbanza. And I think we've really come to the end of tonight's discussion. I think I'm going to give everyone a chance just to share perhaps one vital point with our farmers in the space, people within the agricultural value chain, along the agricultural value chain. One final comment from you, and then I'll just give a brief outline of the topics that we'll be focusing on over the next 2 weeks. I'm going to start with Dr. Ikhsan and then Gazala, and then I'll give Dr. Mbanza the last word. Thank you so much.
I think something simple from me is that even though you're farming with your own animals and might be your own land, you can't do it alone. You are dependent on peers. You are dependent on others for advice. Just to be a sounding board for ideas that you have, and so try and reach out as much as you can. You will learn a lot from others because sometimes you might not have the answers that you are looking for yourself. So reaching out to others, it's via Farmers Union or a farmers club or soil conservation club or anything, co-op farmers as well. Just go there and seek some knowledge, seek some advice, and perhaps you'll find the right answer that you were looking for. Thanks.
I want to leave you with the thought of to improve with 100% on your current level. It's not as easy to improve 100% on one thing, then you won't get to 100%. But improve 1% on 100 things, then you can easily get to 100%. So do a little bit better on each aspect, and you will see the reward.
Thank you so much, Gazala. Dr. Mbanza?
I would say, trying to be brief, to say record keeping and experience work together. But the opportunity of learning is to look at your past, is to look at what you have done before, and don't forget where you are going. What is your goal? And for you to be able to achieve your goal, it is critically important that you must learn each and every day. That's where then the record keeping come into play. Because if you don't have record, you won't be able to learn. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I feel very sorry because I thought, as I mentioned before, that we would maybe briefly talk about setting up a health plan or vaccination program. If maybe, Gazala, you can touch on that briefly, and then I'll wrap up after that. Thank you so much for everyone's last and final comments. We're just going to go one step before. Gazala, over to you. Sorry about that, guys.
No, that's fine. Dawn, I'm not an expert on the health aspects, even to our customers. I'd rather refer them to some of the medication reps.
Okay, for sure. Either Dr. Samuels or Dr. Mbanza, if you have like one short piece of advice or something that you can maybe, even if it's a reference, speak to this person here or go to your local department, what should people do?
Okay. I think on the question of the house plan, I'm not quite sure if it's talking about the house plan for animals or for feedlot system.
I said health plan or vaccination program.
Or it's a health plan.
Yes, sir.
Okay. No, okay. Well, even myself, I may not be precise on this, but generally it is critically important to understand the disease that are in the area. Some of the disease, for example, are becoming more prominent after heavy rain. So now you need then to understand that what is the critical time of your raining season in your particular farm, what kind of vaccination then you need to do, because you know that if there's this rain, we've got normally experiencing this kind of diseases. So it helps then for you to know that in this particular plan at this time of the year, after maybe heavy rain or something, this is what is happening. It's even worse nowadays because we speak of this climate change condition where there is a drastic change of the weather pattern in different parts of the area as due to the climate change. So it's able to be, what I would say, be able to, in your area, contact with the vets, either state vets that is available. If you've got have fund enough, then you can consult a private vet because they know what kind of outbreaks at what time in that particular area would be, so that you will plan to know that, okay, at this time of the year, after this has happened or after we experience the rain, this is what likely to come. Then you are vaccinating against it. I think that basic might help. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of my speakers. So hopefully by next week we'll do that discussion. And then the week after, I think a few weeks ago we also spoke about aquaculture. We spoke about aquaculture in Southern Africa, and so the week after that we'll be talking about understanding mariculture and the opportunities that's available for new farmers. And we're hoping to invite some of our speakers back that was part of our discussion a few weeks ago again, and then focusing more on mariculture as well. So thank you again to everyone who listened. Thank you so much to our regulars. Thank you so much to our speakers, and enjoy the rest of your evening and everything of the best with your farming journeys. From my side, Donumdu and the rest of the Food from Zanzi team, keep smiling, keep, thriving within agriculture, and everything of the best. Bye.